Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. At 4 a.m., deep in the desert, I woke to a sound that didn't belong, metal scraping rock, a generator coughing to life. When I grabbed my rifle and stepped outside, I found strangers trenching through my land. No warning, no permission, just lies, silence, and a fight they never saw coming. I woke up to the kind of noise that doesn't belong in the desert at 4 in the morning. A low, rhythmic clank, like metal against rock. My house sits far enough from the nearest neighbor that if I hear anything before dawn, it's either wildlife or trouble. And this wasn't wildlife. Still half asleep, I sat up in bed, listening. There it was again. Thud, scrape, then the unmistakable cough of a generator kicking in. I grabbed the flashlight from my nightstand, threw on jeans and boots, and unlocked the gun cabinet by the door. My .30-06 Winchester, legal and clean, went over my shoulder. I didn't plan on shooting anyone, but I wasn't walking blind into whatever this was. The noise was coming from the edge of my southern boundary, about 200 feet past the wellhead. That's when I saw the light. 2 construction-grade lamps lighting up a raw trench dug right through my property. Fresh-cut earth, 2 feet wide and deep, slicing diagonally across the brush like a scar. And in the trench, big black plastic piping. Water line. There were 3 of them. 2 guys in orange vests and one standing over a generator drinking coffee like this was just another Tuesday. None of them noticed me until I got within 30 feet. That's when one finally turned, squinting under the beam of my flashlight. "Whoa, hey there, sir," he said, hands up like he was greeting a skittish dog. "Just routine maintenance." I kept my distance, racking the flashlight slowly along the trench. "Routine maintenance on whose property?" "We're here under municipal contract," the second one chimed in. "Temporary water routing." "All approved, sir. You don't have to worry." I tilted my head. "Got paperwork on that?" They exchanged a look. "It's with the supervisor." "Where's the supervisor?" They both turned toward the man with the coffee. He just smiled. "We're not trying to cause a problem, sir. The HOA submitted the work order. We're just following instructions." HOA. Of course. That would be Karen Godfrey's HOA, the same pack of over-manicured vampires building their precious eco-spa on the other side of the arroyo. The same Karen who tried to get me to voluntarily contribute to their landscaping fund 2 years ago, even though I'm not, never was, and never will be a part of their concrete cult. I raised the flashlight higher. "Turn off the generator, now!" and step back from the trench. They hesitated, but I guess a man with a rifle and zero tolerance for bull made an impression. They killed the lights. Then I pulled out my phone and called the police. 15 minutes later, I saw headlights bouncing up my driveway. 2 deputies stepped out, Falls and Rivera. I'd dealt with them before during a cattle rustling case 6 years back. Seemed all right then, but tonight, Falls walked up and took one look at the trench before grinning. "Damn, John, did you build yourself a moat?" "Someone's digging through my land without permission," I said flatly. "I want this documented." Rivera crouched over the trench, whistling through his teeth. "Looks like water pipe. That's real municipal grade stuff. It's trespassing. I want to file a report. Ask for permits." Falls chuckled, slapping Rivera on the shoulder. "Relax. Karen told us this might happen. HOA had to reroute some stuff temporarily. You know how these projects go." My stomach tightened. "You spoke with Karen?" "Sure," Falls said like it was nothing. "She cleared it with the city, I'm sure. You know how tight she is with the county board." "Then show me the permit. Show me anything that says these men should be digging across 10 acres of private, registered, fenced land." "Come on, John," Falls said with a grin. "Don't take it so personal. It's just a pipe." I stared at them. "Do your damn job and document it. Or are you here to laugh with your friend?" Falls' smile slipped. "If you've got an issue, file a complaint with the county. That's not our call tonight." Rivera gave a half-apologetic shrug. "We're not getting in the middle of a zoning squabble, man. Not at 4 a.m. I watched them drive off, tail lights disappearing down the gravel road, while the so-called contractors stood awkwardly next to their equipment, unsure whether to finish or flee. Back inside, I sat at the kitchen table with the rifle still across my lap, a mug of black coffee untouched in front of me, and my phone playing back every word I just recorded on voice memo. I wasn't just angry, I was awake. And now it was personal. 2 nights later, the sound came back. It was subtler this time, No generator, just shovels and quiet voices trying hard not to carry in the night air, but I was already half dressed before I reached the front door. My boots hit the porch like gunshots. This time, I didn't bother with questions. I grabbed the Winchester, flipped on the porch floodlight, and stepped into the yard like I owned the land, which, last I checked, I still did. The moment they saw me, all motion stopped. 3 men, one in a reflective vest, 2 in plain work shirts. One had a pickaxe halfway to the ground. He froze like I'd pointed a rattlesnake at his face. "You were told," I said calmly, "that no one sets foot on this land again." The guy with the vest opened his mouth like he was about to give the same song and dance, but I cut him off by chambering a round with a loud metallic clack. No aiming. No threats, just a fact. "Leave. Now." They looked at each other. One dropped his gloves. The others turned and made for their trucks in a rush. I stood still, breathing slow, barrel down, keeping my eyes on them until their tires spun out of my gravel and vanished down the road. The trench they'd started digging again ran about 12 feet further than before. I stood there for a minute in silence, then walked the new damage, quietly counting the cost in topsoil and native plants I'd cultivated myself. They hadn't just trespassed, they were crawling through my land like termites, hoping I'd roll over. Not tonight. I walked back to the house and hadn't even taken the rifle off my shoulder when I saw blue and red lights flash across the inside wall. They didn't knock. Falls stepped out of the driver's side like he'd just finished a burger, not responding to a potential weapons call. Rivera followed, slower, not looking me in the eye. I didn't invite them in. I stood on my porch with the rifle in plain sight. "Well, well," Falls drawled, "you really want to be the guy firing warning shots over a pipe?" "I didn't fire at anyone. I fired up." He pointed at me. "You understand how bad this looks? We got a call that you brandished a weapon and scared off licensed contractors. That's a felony if they press it." "You got a call from who, exactly?" Rivera shifted uncomfortably. I walked down one step, pulled a folded sheet of paper from my back pocket, and held it out. "This is a temporary restraining order from Judge Martinez, filed yesterday. It explicitly prohibits any construction or installation activity on my land until a court review is complete." Falls took it, glancing over the first paragraph before handing it off to Rivera like it burned. "Where did you get this?" "My lawyer. You remember him, Daniel Hunter. He was copied on the original complaint I filed last week. And unlike your friend Karen, he doesn't make things up." Falls sucked at his teeth, visibly annoyed. Rivera looked up from the paper. "It's legit." "Damn right it is," I said. "So unless you're here to arrest the trespassers, I suggest you read that paragraph about enforcement and liability for local authorities." Falls took a step forward. "Why don't you come down to the station, talk this through with us? Be easier than yelling on your porch." "Not interested." "You sure?" "Positive. You're not coming in, and I'm not going anywhere." We stared at each other for a beat too long. His jaw twitched, but he didn't move. Rivera finally stepped back and muttered, "Let's go, Paul." Falls lingered for another second. "You're really pushing this, John." I nodded slowly. "I'm counting on it." They turned and walked back to the cruiser. I waited until the taillights vanished before stepping inside and locking the door behind me. I set the rifle down, turned on my recorder, and narrated every detail of the encounter. Voices, quotes, movements, everything. Because whatever this was, it was no longer just about some pipe, and the ones digging weren't the only ones getting buried. The next morning started quiet. Too quiet, if you ask me. I made coffee, sat on the porch with my notebook and my audio recorder, and reviewed every line from the night before. I didn't trust memory anymore, not when people with badges laughed in your face while others tunneled under your land like rats. By 10, the quiet broke. An envelope arrived, no postage, just folded under a rock at the gate like some mafia threat in a cowboy film. Inside, a friendly notice from the HOA. Not official letterhead, just a smug little Word doc that read, "Mr. Clay, while we respect your concerns, we believe your recent behavior constitutes a threat to public safety and cooperative relations between neighboring entities. If you're willing to withdraw your filings and allow completion of essential infrastructure work, we are prepared to discuss a goodwill settlement. Please consider avoiding unnecessary escalation. Respectfully, KG." They really thought I'd fold over a Word document in a passive-aggressive threat. I laughed. I needed that laugh. By noon, a white SUV showed up. Guy in khakis, aviators, clipboard in hand. I knew the type. HOA consultant PR Rapper. He rang the bell, and I let him speak into the camera doorbell without opening. Mr. Clay, I'm here just to mediate. You're making this into something much bigger than it needs to be. Let's talk man to man. No lawyers. You're on private property, I replied. You've got 10 seconds to leave before I call the sheriff. The real one. He left without argument. I documented it all. By evening, the phone calls started. Blocked numbers. Soft voices. One was Karen herself. I let it go to voicemail. She sounded different now, less arrogant, more pleading, talking about the future of the neighborhood and coexistence. I forwarded every voicemail to my lawyer. Then I put the phone on airplane mode. It wasn't until just after midnight that I heard the tapping. Not on a window, on the side of the house. I grabbed the recorder, flipped on the side light, and stepped outside with my flashlight. There was no one visible, but next to the generator shed, I found a fresh marker stake in the ground, neon pink, with a code printed on it, like utility markers, and a tag reading easement line. They were testing me. Again. I recorded everything. I dug the stake out with a trowel, bagged it for evidence, and sat back in my office, documenting every detail with GPS and timestamp. At 3 a.m., I emailed the package to both my lawyer and our private investigator, a retired detective named Henry Lott, who Daniel had brought on board after we learned just how deep Karen's ties went. Lott had already warned me. Karen wasn't just corrupt. She was reckless, and she was panicking now. By morning, I had a reply. Lott had dug deeper into the paper trail. Not only was the easement fake, it had been notarized by someone already under investigation for fraud. Better yet, the same notary had handled 3 other transactions for the HOA in the past year. A pattern was forming. Daniel called me at 8 sharp. "You've done everything right so far," he said. "Now, let me and Henry handle the rest. But I'll say this, don't talk to anyone alone. Don't open that gate for anyone. You're making people nervous, and nervous people do stupid things." He wasn't wrong, but they weren't the only ones who could do calculated things. 2 days passed with nothing but desert wind and silence, and that silence was louder than any noise. I didn't trust it. Not after the stake, the calls, the fake notice. Something was brewing, and sure enough, I didn't have to wait long. It started just before dawn. I was making coffee when I heard a low rumble. Not thunder, not coyotes. A diesel engine. I stepped onto the porch and spotted headlights crawling up the dirt access lane, the unpaved stretch by the southeast edge of my land. Not a public road, certainly not an approved construction route. 2 trucks. Flatbeds with utility tanks and digging gear, same unmarked gear as before. I grabbed my rifle. I didn't aim it. I didn't wave it around like some lunatic. I just stood there, with it slung over my shoulder, and walked out calmly as the first crew member hopped off the cab. He froze. I could see the hesitation in his eyes as he looked at me, then at the private property, no access signs, then at the rifle. I spoke first. Calm. Cold. "You're trespassing. Turn around and leave. Right now." The second guy, younger, maybe mid-20s, stepped down, held up some clipboard like it meant something. "We got authorization from the city." "No, you didn't," I said, and pulled a folded paper from my back pocket. "This is a court-issued injunction. You lay one finger on my land, and you're in violation of a legal order. You dig so much as a boot heel into this dirt, and I will have you both arrested for criminal trespass and contempt." They didn't even argue. They climbed back into the truck, reversed slowly down the slope, and took off. An hour later, I got the visit I was expecting, but hoping wouldn't come. The same patrol car as before, Officers Falls and Rivera. I didn't wait for them to knock. I met them at the gate, holding the same injunction copy. "Back again?" I asked. Officer Falls looked irritated. "We had a report that you threatened contractors with a firearm. I warned trespassers with a legal weapon on my land. I also have a court injunction prohibiting all activity pending resolution of the fraud investigation. You want to see it again?" I handed them the document. Rivera read it, then glanced at Falls. They didn't look happy. Falls handed it back. "All right, no need to escalate things, but we'd like to talk. Off the record, come with us downtown just to clear a few things up." "No," I said. "If you have something to ask it here. Otherwise, you can leave. I'm not getting in any vehicle unless there's a warrant or arrest." They hesitated, looked at each other, then without another word, they walked back to their cruiser and drove off. I stood in the driveway another full minute before I let the breath out of my chest. I walked back inside, locked the door, checked the windows, then made 3 backup copies of every recording, every file, every document I had. 1 went to my lawyer, 1 went to Henry, 1 I sealed in a fireproof box under the floorboards. That evening, a letter appeared in my mailbox, this time properly stamped and mailed. Return address, HOA office. Inside, a printed apology from the HOA's legal committee, complete with vague language about misunderstandings and cooperative community engagement, and a request to meet privately to resolve the issue amicably. I didn't reply, but I did record myself reading it aloud, time-stamped, logged, and filed, because if there was one thing I'd learned, it was this. When snakes change tone, they're not growing kinder, they're just circling tighter. By the time the HOA's amicable letter arrived, I knew things were only going to get uglier. They'd tried to sneak in construction, they'd tried charm, they'd tried intimidation through friendly cops, all in 5 days. That wasn't patience. That was desperation. And desperate people made mistakes. Next came the threats. It started with phone calls, first anonymous, then just masked numbers that rang twice and stopped. Then came the voicemails. Garbled voices telling me I should drop the whole thing, that everyone makes mistakes, and that no one wants to see a lonely old man get buried in court fees. I recorded them all. I logged dates, times, and transferred every recording to a secure drive. Then I forwarded them to my attorney, Danielle Reese, a tough-as-nails land rights lawyer with a permanent scowl and a memory like a steel trap. "I'll file a protective order first thing in the morning," she said. "But if this keeps up, we go federal. Civil rights, property violations, harassment, all of it." Then came the mail. Letters without return addresses, slipped in at night. One had a dead lizard inside. Another had a cartoon cut out of a grave with my name on it and the words, "Drop the suit." They were getting sloppy. I wore gloves when handling each one, sealed them in plastic bags, and cataloged them in a box labeled HOA's Greatest Hits. But the real hit came on Friday afternoon. I was walking the eastern fence line when I noticed new dirt movement, small piles near the creek bed. That creek wasn't active, but it did cross the southern edge of my land. I crouched down and brushed some loose sand aside, fresh cuts in the soil, shovel marks. They were trying to work again, quietly, this time without trucks. I followed the signs for 50 yards until I found what I was expecting, a freshly buried pipe, less than 6 inches under the soil. Sloppy job. Not industrial, hand-dug. Like they sent in a small team overnight, probably trying to finish before the injunction hearing next week. That night, I sat in my office, lights out, listening. At 1:14 a.m., I heard movement, gravel crunch, voices in the dark. I didn't grab the rifle this time. I grabbed my recorder, hit the red button, and stepped out into the night. 3 silhouettes stood by the edge of the trench, whispering. 2 wore reflective vests. 1 had a backpack. I didn't say a word, just stood in the moonlight, arms crossed. They saw me, froze, then bolted, one of them stumbling, dropping the backpack. They vanished into the brush. I didn't chase. I picked up the bag. Inside, a bundled roll of maps, 2 pairs of gloves, and a small notebook labeled Alt Line S. I handed everything over to Henry the next day, the private investigator Danielle had brought in, retired homicide detective. Didn't talk much, but his eyes missed nothing. He reviewed everything. The maps, the recordings, the threats, even the soil. Then he looked me straight in the eye. They're panicking. And when people like Karen panic, they lash out, or they try to settle. But not because it's right, because they're scared you're about to blow the whole thing open. I didn't smile. I didn't nod. I just opened a fresh folder, labeled it Phase 2, and got to work. By Tuesday morning, my property looked less like a quiet ranch and more like a war zone disguised as a pasture. Every morning, I'd do the same routine. Check the fence lines, inspect the trench, look for new disturbances in the dirt, listen for engines. Then I'd review the audio logs from the night before, catalog any threats, and send the materials to Danielle and Henry. At this point, I was no longer reacting. I was documenting, and I knew something was coming. I could feel it. It happened that afternoon. A brand new white SUV pulled into my drive, nice and slow, like they wanted to be invited. Out stepped Karen Godfrey herself. She wore a tailored beige suit and sunglasses that probably cost more than my truck. 2 younger men followed her. One of them I recognized from earlier footage, the one who dropped the backpack. I didn't walk to the gate. I didn't wave. I just stood on my porch, arms crossed, tucked inside my waistband. Karen called out in her sweetest voice, the kind you reserve for funerals and courtrooms. Mr. Clay, Jonathan, can we talk like civilized people? I didn't answer. I just held up my phone and tapped the screen, recording. She hesitated, then smiled like she was trying to hide a grimace. She began with pleasantries. We've had some confusion, some paperwork issues, miscommunications. Her voice was syrupy. We're willing to come to an arrangement. Let's say a settlement. The man next to her opened a folder, pulled out a document. We're prepared to offer you compensation for temporary utility easement, $50,000, and we'll reseed the land after completion. You won't even know we were there. I stared at them for a long moment, then took a single step forward. You've already been here, without permission. You've already lied, dug trenches, falsified documents. You've trespassed, damaged my land, and threatened me. Karen blinked, then spoke slowly, deliberately. Jonathan, there are ways to resolve this quietly. If you proceed, the association will pursue damages. Defamation. You could lose everything. That's when I lost my patience. I walked down from the porch, looked Karen dead in the eye, and said, You already tried that. And your fake cop friends? They won't be laughing in court. Then I handed her a copy of the temporary injunction issued that morning by the state judge, barring all construction or utility-related activity within the boundaries of my property until full investigation concludes. She took it with trembling fingers. Read it. Said nothing. I turned and walked back into my house. By evening, Danielle called. They tried filing an emergency counter-motion to vacate the injunction, she said. Judge denied it within an hour. The documents you submitted sealed it. That night, they didn't come back. No trucks, no workers, no SUVs. Instead, around 11 p.m., I heard footsteps at my back fence. Slow, deliberate. When I stepped out with the recorder in hand, the voice that came through the dark was unmistakably Karen's. Think carefully, Jonathan. No one cares about a stubborn old man in the desert. You want to be left alone? Then drop the suit. Or you'll get isolation, just not the kind you enjoy. She left before I could say a word, just like a ghost, one that didn't understand it was already doomed. The morning after Karen's late-night threat, I didn't sleep in. I woke before sunrise, brewed a pot of sludge-thick coffee, and waited on the porch with my phone set to record. My nerves buzzed like live wires. Not from fear, no, that had burned out days ago, but from the calm, deliberate tension of a man preparing for siege. At 8:17 a.m., it began. A letter-sized envelope was slid under my gate by a man in a courier uniform. He didn't say a word, just got back in a black SUV with no plates and left. Inside was a typed letter. You have 72 hours to withdraw all legal filings and cease obstruction of HOA infrastructure efforts, or further action will be taken. This is your final warning. No logo, no name, just bold text and a signature line left blank. I scanned it, emailed it to Danielle and Henry, then forwarded a copy to the DA's office. No reply came immediately, but I wasn't expecting one. That afternoon, I noticed my mailbox had been smashed in. Not dented, obliterated, bent steel and splintered post. Next to it, someone had left a pile of broken PVC pipes and what looked like animal entrails. Charming. At sunset, a drone buzzed over my roof. Not mine. I didn't own one. It hovered above the porch like it was watching me, then zipped away when I pointed my shotgun at it. I recorded the whole thing. It wasn't paranoia anymore. They were escalating. I reached out to Henry, who offered a quiet suggestion. Get out of the house for a few days. Go off-grid, let them sweat. So I drove into the hills that night, slept in my truck with my dog and my recorder, left decoys at home, lights on, truck in the drive. But when I returned the next morning, everything was untouched. Then the voicemail came, Karen's voice smooth as always. Jonathan, I understand this has gotten out of hand. Let's meet. Just talk. No lawyers, just you and me. Maybe we can fix this before more damage is done. That was when I knew she was scared. And people like her, they don't get scared unless something's coming they can't stop. That night, I set a few traps of my own. Not the spring-loaded kind, no. Just signs, motion detectors, and a hidden recorder in the oak tree near the trench. I wasn't aiming to catch them red-handed. I wanted to catch them planning it. It was just past midnight when I got what I'd been waiting for. The audio recorder in the oak tree crackled to life with voices, low, hushed, but clear. I sat in my kitchen, headphones on, scribbling notes as the words came through. We start at the fence line. Dig south. The survey pins were moved weeks ago. Nobody'll question it. The judge's order only applies to his parcel. If we angle it right, it's technically a public easement. The voice wasn't Karen's. It belonged to a man, likely one of the contractors I'd seen on my land. A second voice chimed in, laughing. And if the old man tries anything, we just say we thought it was HOA property. Let him sue. What's he gonna do? Spend another 50 grand? I sat back in my chair, pulse steady, cold rage blooming in my gut. They weren't just lying. They were strategizing, coordinating an illegal incursion under the guise of ignorance, and they were ready to violate a judge's injunction just to finish their pipeline. I emailed the audio to Danielle and Henry before sunrise. By noon, the sky over my ranch rumbled again. A full-sized backhoe pulled up along the eastern fence line, not the trench they'd dug before, but a new area close to the property boundary. 3 workers got out, didn't bother hiding. They were in HOA vests again, hard hats, orange cones. One began measuring. Another started marking spots with spray paint. I stepped outside slowly, recorder clipped to my shirt, rifle over my shoulder. "You know there's a court order, right?" I called. One of them shrugged. "This isn't your land, old man. Check the county plat. HOA owns to the arroyo." I smiled without warmth. "I am the county plat, you idiot." That's when a 4th man walked out from the truck. Officer Rivera. He looked at the scene, then turned to me. "Jonathan, we had a complaint. They said you threatened workers again." "Number I told them to leave," I said flatly. "And I have the recording." "You want to hear it?" He didn't answer. Instead, he asked if I'd be willing to step inside for a conversation. I laughed once, short, bitter. "I'm not going anywhere. You're trespassing. You're violating a state injunction. And you know what that means, Rivera. You want to play stupid, go ahead. But I'm not moving." He paused, looked around. Maybe he realized how many people were watching. 2 neighbors stood by the fence with phones in hand. Maybe he saw the writing on the wall. He said nothing else. Just nodded, told the crew to pack up, and left. By evening, Henry called. The DA's office finally pulled phone records. Karen's been in contact with both officers multiple times during work hours. Unofficial channels. They're opening an ethics investigation. Then he added something that caught my breath. "And, Jonathan, turns out one of the contractors on her site is a disbarred civil engineer from Arizona, suspended for falsifying permits. He's been using a different name." I let that sit for a second. Then I grabbed my notebook. It was time to put this fire under public light. The next morning, I was already sitting in front of the county courthouse, a manila folder on my lap, when the local reporter arrived. Her name was Ellen Drew, mid-30s, sharp, and hungry for something that wasn't another school board debate. I handed her the audio files, photos, the fake servitude agreement, and the court order. Her eyebrows kept rising higher with each page. This is a full-on conspiracy," she muttered. "You've got forged documents, illegal construction, police misconduct, a contaminated water supply, and threats. Don't forget those," I added. "Anonymous letters, property damage, intimidation. And now they're trying to reroute the trench by faking property lines." Within 48 hours, the story hit the front page of the local paper and went viral on the regional news sites. Retired engineer exposes HOA's secret pipeline scheme. Officials under scrutiny. I was suddenly flooded with messages. Former HOA members reached out anonymously, sharing that Karen had been planning the Eco Center for over a year, pushing it as a legacy project. Turns out, her husband sat on the board of a green energy investment firm. If the pipeline went through, they'd stand to make 7 figures in state grants and water rights deals. Danielle, my lawyer, submitted a formal request to the Attorney General's office to revoke the HOA's nonprofit status on grounds of organized fraud. Then came the knock, but not the sheriff. This time, it was 2 investigators from the State Department of Environmental Quality, plus a third from the New Mexico office of the Inspector General. They spent 6 hours combing over the trench, the piping, and the water testing logs. When they were done, one of them said, almost quietly, "This is going to cause real problems. They tapped into an aquifer without proper filtration. There's chlorine residue in your soil and traces of backflow into your well. My fists clenched so tight I thought I'd split the bones. That night, Rivera came by again, but he didn't come to threaten. He stood at the fence looking uncomfortable. "I got suspended," he said. "They're pulling all my calls. I'm screwed either way. Just don't drag my family into this, all right?" I didn't answer. I just watched him turn and walk away. The next morning, Karen was arrested. Fraud, document falsification, environmental violations, conspiracy, misuse of authority. She wasn't in cuffs when they took her, but she was in shock. The news vans were already outside the HOA office. Her car got egged. Someone spray painted "Who's Laughing Now" on the sidewalk in front of her model eco spa. And best of all, the court issued a freeze on all HOA projects, accounts, and permit activity pending the outcome of the case. I sat on my porch with my coffee and watched the sunrise. For the first time in weeks, the ground was quiet, but I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. The courthouse was packed for the preliminary hearing. Karen sat at the defense table, pale and tight-lipped, flanked by her new lawyer. Not the same smug HOA attorney who'd helped her fake the servitude agreement. He'd been arrested, too, 2 days earlier after investigators raided his office and found an entire drawer of notarized blank forms, including 2 with forged signatures, mine included. The judge read off the charges like he was announcing a grocery list: conspiracy to defraud, environmental negligence, falsification of public documents, unlawful construction on private land, abuse of municipal resources, and criminal collusion with public officials. The courtroom murmured when the last one was read. I didn't flinch. Officer Falls and Officer Rivera sat behind her, each with their own legal counsel. They'd been granted immunity in exchange for full cooperation. According to the DA, Rivera had already turned over months of texts and emails between him and Karen, including one where she promised a consulting position on the spa project once he retired. The prosecution argued that the HOA, under Karen's direction, had deliberately used falsified paperwork to mislead inspectors and install infrastructure across private land, fully expecting the property owner, me, to be too isolated or powerless to stop it. They'd underestimated the one thing they hadn't planned for. I was an engineer with 30 years of field experience, and I kept records like it was religion. The ruling came faster than expected. Karen was denied bail due to risk of tampering with evidence and witness intimidation. The state prepared to bring a civil suit to dissolve the HOA entirely. Her eco spa project was already dismantled, pipes dug up, trenches sealed, and permits voided. As for me, the court awarded $950,000 in damages, including environmental remediation, legal expenses, and punitive compensation for the emotional and financial stress. The judge called the HOA's actions a textbook case of arrogance backed by fraudulent bureaucracy. 3 months later, I held an open town meeting in the old Grange Hall just outside town. I stood in front of 100 people, holding up the fake servitude agreement and a photo of the trench they carved through my land. I was told to calm down, I said, to let it go, that it was just a pipe. But let this be a lesson. When someone thinks your land is easier to steal than to ask for, you hold the line. The room erupted in applause. Now, at the edge of my property, where the pipeline once ran, there's a wooden sign in bold white paint. "You laughed at me when I warned you. Who's laughing now?" And not a single damn pipe left underground.